With the second pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins select Chase Young, defensive end, Ohio State.
But you know as they say, hail to the Redskins. Let's roll, man. Let's go.
Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sister. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report. So, there was much debate about what the Redskins would do at number 66. And for those of you who joined me on my draft party, thank you. There was some technical difficulties on day number 2. That's an understatement to say the least, but you guys hung tough with me and we were able to get through the entire second round and ultimately to number 66 with the Washington Redskins. And there was so much debate as to what the Redskins should do at 66. There was a build-up, obviously, with no second-round pick. And what was the pick going to be? What should the Redskins do? Should it be a corner? Should it be an offensive tackle? Should the Redskins go wide receiver? Is that where the value is at 66? What about tight end? No tight ends have really been taken. Should the Redskins go there? And we sat down and we debated back and forth and we deliberated, and finally, the Redskins put all of that to rest by drafting what exactly? In Antonio Gibson. They drafted everything is what they did. I mean, you can play this guy essentially anywhere. And when the pick was initially made, as Redskins fans, most of us were disappointed, I think. And I think more so because of the lack of information. A lot of us had not done our homework on Antonio Gibson. I know I was guilty, and I told you guys as much last night. Look, I was not a huge fan of the pick, but I said, look, I'm going to go do my homework before I judge this pick and decide whether I feel like the Redskins squandered 66 and made a potential mistake, or if the Redskins got this thing right like they did last season when they made Terry McLaurin their third-round pick. And remember, if you remember vividly, last year I wasn't the biggest fan of the McLaurin pick, and a lot of you were like, dude, you're tripping. You got to go watch Terry, man. This guy's legit. And after careful consideration and examination of Terry McLaurin, I came back and told you guys, okay. I offered up a 00. Okay. I was wrong. You guys are right. This guy's legit. And what did Terry do? He went out and proved it in his rookie campaign. Should have had 1,000 yards had he not gotten hurt towards the end of the season. So, Terry McLaurin was everything we could ask for and then some in a third-round pick. And the question is, did the Redskins get this right at 66? I told you I was going to get into the lab and find that out and come back and report my findings. And everyone's going to have their own opinion, as you should, all right? And I went back and I put on the tape, and it was funny. I was as I was doing my draft party, and the Redskins made the pick, and I was reading comments about, Antonio Gibson from other Redskins fans that were in the chat discussion during the draft party. One of those Redskins fans said, Louie's going to watch the tape and realize that every other play is a touchdown. And I'm like, man, get out of here. You're watching highlights. I'm going to go watch the games. And what I actually found is that every other play was a touchdown. It was amazing. I'm going to give you, so I told you I was going to go on the lab. Here it is. I did a full write-up on Antonio Gibson. Here's what I found. And you know what I'm thinking about doing? And I'm kind of going back and forth on whether I should or shouldn't, is putting together a Draft Prospects 101 breakdown of Antonio Gibson and putting it up on IG. I'm thinking about doing it, but at the same time, honestly, all I would be doing is and I didn't go back and watch any of his highlight tapes, but I'm assuming if I go do a breakdown, all I'm doing is pretty much putting together a highlight tape for you, because that's essentially what it is. There isn't really a ton of film, and I'll get into that here with the breakdown, but it's essentially a highlight tape is what it is. If you watch this highlight tape, you watched it, you don't really get a sense of when these plays took place, how it took place, in what context these plays took place. So that's the thing you'll miss if you just watch the highlight tape. But that's essentially what it is his season in 2019 was a highlight tape. It was one huge highlight tape, one big play after another. And so if I want to get in depth as to what he brings to the table and kind of explain to you the things that I wrote down in my notes, then maybe I should do the breakdown. And I know you guys may leave it in the comment section whether you want me to do it or not. I'll look into it. I don't know if I'll do it or not, but if I get some time, I might put something together, kind of explain to you what this guy actually brings to the table. I probably don't even need to do so because you guys have two eyes. You can see for yourself. But here's Antonio Gibson in a nutshell. The Redskins essentially selected a wide receiver, a running back, and a kick returner all in one body here in Antonio Gibson. He's just a football player. He's an athlete. That's essentially, if he were being recruited right now, he wouldn't have an actual position next to his name. He'd have ATH next to his name, and that stands for athlete. That's essentially what Antonio Gibson is. His measurables, and this is something that was hotly debated by Redskins fans, at least on my video, because there was some discrepancy out there. And one of the sites that I use actually has him listed at 6'2". But if you go off of some of these sites, you can be misled. He's not 6'2", guys. You can see it on tape. He's 6 feet. Okay, trust me. He's 6 feet. He was measured at the combine. He's 6 feet. Okay, so there's no debating here that he's 6'2". He's 6 feet. Okay, 228 pounds. That's legit. And what happens sometimes is that sites just go off of what the team has on their website. And I told you, these teams usually never actually have the right size for their players because during the course of them putting together their program or their website, they'll add an inch or two. Like I gave the example of me being in high school, and I was 6'2" when I was in high school. And in the program that they would give out to the fans coming to the games, I'd be 6'2". I've never been an inch over 6 feet a day in my life. Okay, so yeah, he's 6 feet 228, guys. Okay, 6 feet 228, which is a thick framed running back / wide receiver / kick returner. Okay, so and he runs a 4.39 40, so the guy can absolutely fly. Okay, he's a burner, no doubt about it. The Redskins just added legit game-breaking, game-changing speed here with Antonio Gibson, which is never a bad thing, ever. Okay, no matter what position they play, if they can run that fast, there is value in that. Trust me. So he's out of Memphis, obviously, and I went back and I watched 4 games. Navy, SMU, Cincinnati, and Penn State. So those are the 4 games that I watched. Season stats are essentially his career stats, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. But reception-wise, he was 38 receptions for 735 yards and 8 touchdowns, which is ridiculous. And you're talking about 19 and some change, essentially 20 yards per reception, which is dumb. All right, just ridiculous, utterly nonsensical, okay? Rush yards, same kind of deal here. 33 rushes, 369 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So again, up over 11 yards per tote, which someone brought up in the comment section. I'm like, look, there's context to everything, and numbers can be misleading. These numbers are not, okay? These are legit plays in game when the game is still on the line. He didn't play on a 2-13 team. They're getting their ass whooped, and he's getting a bunch of garbage time yards. This is in the context and the framework of close games that they ultimately won. They went 11-2 this past season, okay? They were a good football team. So their 2 losses, their first loss was, I forget who it might have been to. I think it might have been to Houston, and their other loss was to Penn State. Like, they lost 2 games all season. So this guy was putting up some big numbers and some critical performances in a conference that actually was pretty damn good this past season in the AAC. So, and then kick return yards, 23 kick returns for 645 yards and a score. So this guy lit it up, and just about every 7 or so times he touched the football, it was a touchdown. And that's not joking. That's literal. Like almost every 7 or 8 times he touched the football, it was a touchdown, which is insane. We'll get to that a little bit later on. But when you look at his strengths, he's got size. When you look at him as a running back, he's huge. All right. If you're looking at him in that vein at 6 feet, 228, that is massive. Most running backs don't clear 5'10", and most running backs aren't north of 225. So those numbers, those measurables are just off the charts when you look at him as a running back. Now, if you're looking at him as a wide receiver, height-wise, 6 feet, not really all that great. But when you look at that 228, that is massive. Either way you slice it, kick returner, receiver, running back, 228 is a big boy. All right. And to carry that 228 and to be able to run a sub 4.4 at 4.39 is also a big effing deal. Okay, guys. So his size and athleticism is the next pro in terms of his strengths. And really the athleticism that I'm referring to here is his leaping ability. When you watch him, oh my God, this guy can get up and go get the football. Okay. And so that's one of the reasons I'm thinking about doing a draft breakdown of him, is because little caveats like that, him climbing the ladder and body control to go get the football. These are things that you can't teach these things. Either you can or you can't. Like some guys can't go up outside of their frame and extend for the football. He does it routinely, and he does it like a guy that's 6'2", 6'3". He's got that kind of leaping ability. When I watch him go get the football in the air, it's akin to like Steve Smith, who's 5'9", 5'10", going up in the air and jumping at like a 6'3", 6'4" type of wingspan and getting the football. And I look at that and I see him jumping in the air, and it's similar to a guy with a catch radius of a 6'4", 6'5" frame. And he's going up and climbing the ladder and going and getting it. And that's just pure athleticism and explosion to be able to jump that high and pluck the football out of the air. Very impressive. He's got hands. Again, all the catches don't always look the cleanest, but he always finds a way to come down with the football. And really, that's all I care about. You could say the same thing about Terry McLaurin when he was coming to the league from Ohio State. One of the knocks on him was he didn't have natural hands, and that sometimes the ball would find its way to his body. And we saw that at the next level at the NFL. But guess what? He caught the damn football. And I can say the same thing about Antonio Gibson. Speed and acceleration. Speed! Off the charts. I don't have to explain it to you. The guy runs a 4.39, but the acceleration, it's what sets him apart. You can run fast in a straight line, and a lot of guys can do that. Not necessarily at that clip, but this guy's got legit track speed. But when he turns it up and he actually gets to fifth gear, now it takes him a few steps. He needs to build up that speed. He's not a 2 steps and he's at top speed guy. But if he takes 4 steps, look out. He literally, with each step he takes, he's shifting into another gear. And so by the time he takes that 4th step, he's in 4th gear. His 4th gear is faster than most guys' 5th gear. And by the time he gets to 5th gear, if you're not already in 10th gear, you're not going to catch him. He outruns angles. He makes guys look like they're running in place. That's what happens when he's able to accelerate. So his acceleration is what we call an angle beater. When guys take proper angles, generally, they should be able to push you out of bounds or get you to change directions, which will then allow other players who are in pursuit to come make a play. That's why you don't see a lot of kick returns go for touchdowns, because guys have an angle. They use that angle properly, which forces that player to cut back, and then guys in pursuit are able to come from behind and make the play. He has what we call ankle beating speed, okay? He beats angles. All right, so even if you have a proper angle, a pursuit angle, he can still outrun you and score a touchdown. So it's that kind of speed and acceleration that gets you excited when you watch him. Make you miss. He's got the ability to make you miss out in space. That's why he's such a dynamic kick returner. Now, is he the most fluid in terms of his cuts? Can he string together cuts without losing speed? No, he's not one of those fluid change of direction guys. He's got tight hips. So when he changes directions, you can see it when he changes direction. It's not always the most fluid, but that doesn't matter, okay? Again, when he gets to 4th gear, most guys aren't going to be able to catch him, let alone 5th gear. So he can make you miss out in space. He can change directions. It's just not as fluid as some of these other guys that are like human joysticks, all right? But he can still make you miss out of space. Don't get it twisted. Yards after contact. This is where that 200 and damn near 30-pound frame comes into play. His yards after contact are exceptional. He bounces off of tackles. There's a play against SMU that's just ridiculous where he's at this point a running back. They hand him the football. He looks like he's going to get corralled. He bounces off of one dude. Another tackler comes in, looks like he's about to thrash him and knock him down to the ground. Bounces off of him, spins, makes another guy miss, gets the top speed down the sideline. They can't catch him. It's a touchdown. 80 some odd yards. Ridiculous. I think it was 77 yards, 80 some odd yards. Dumb. Okay. Absolutely ridiculous. So his contact balance and his ability to get yards after contact. And one of my biggest things for running backs and guys in the league that separate them is contact balance, because a lot of players can't withstand contact and stay on their feet. They get hit, they go down. That was always one of my biggest knocks with Clinton Portis, is he would get out into space, and if someone laid a finger on Clinton Portis, he would end up getting tripped up by the turf monster. You got to find a way to stay on your feet. He does. And so his contact balance and his yards after contact are through the roof. And that's where that 228-pound frame really comes into handy. Versatility. This guy obviously plays wide receiver primarily in the slot, not a guy that you play outside, out wide. But that's not to say he can't learn that position and do that as well. But much of his damage at receiver came in the slot. And I think if I'm the Redskins, I'm going to teach him all of the wide receiver positions, but I'm going to be looking to use him in the slot. I'm going to be using him in the backfield. I'm going to be using him somewhere everywhere. I'm going to motion him out to the slot or out wide, throw him a wide receiver screen. I'm just going to find creative ways to get him the football. That's why you drafted him, not to put him in a box, but to use him creatively. So this guy, wide receiver, he can play running back and kick returner. What's interesting about his season this past year is that initially all he was a slot and a kick returner. And then towards the end of the season, they kind of just stumbled upon gold with him. Like, hey, we're going to hand Antonio the ball. This guy's so dynamic. We're just going to find more ways to get him. They start lining him up in the backfield, and he starts making huge plays at the running back position. And they're like, hey, we got to give him the ball as a running back a little bit more. And so as the season progressed, you see his total of carries, because at the beginning of the season, there were no carries. The first 6 games of the season, he didn't have a single rushing attempt. And then it's like they just discovered something that 7th game of the season. And then by the time they played SMU in the 9th game of the season, this guy had 11 carries versus SMU and destroyed SMU. We'll talk about that game here in a second. But they figured out that this guy needs the ball a little bit more as a running back. And by that time, he had really taken college football by storm at that point. So his versatility through the roof. Also ran a kickback for a touchdown. So this guy can do a little bit of everything. Mismatch nightmare. I think that's the thing the Redskins probably saw with him that their eyes lit up. Is like, we can put this guy anywhere on the field and teams won't have an answer for him. I mean, again, if you line him up in the backfield and hand it to him a couple of times, teams are going to look at him as a running back. They're going to treat him as a running back, which is stupid, because then if they motion him out and you walk a backer out there with him, that's where I'm going with the football. All right. Like, immediately, I'm going to say light bulb off in my head. I got one-on-one with a backer. I'm going to Antonio on this play. So if teams are smart, they're just going to assign him a defensive back. Because if you assign him a linebacker, I don't give a damn what linebacker it is. I don't care if it's Isaiah Simmons. Isaiah Simmons can get toasted, even though he runs a 4.39 as well. His 4.39 doesn't look like Antonio Gibson's 4.39 on the field. Okay. He's not used to running 40 yards down the field, stride for stride, step for step, in phase with a guy like Antonio Gibson. So 4.39 is going to be lethal with linebackers and safeties on a guy like Antonio Gibson. So he's going to create mismatches all over the football field. Outstanding ball skills, as I mentioned, his ability to climb the ladder, go get the football. I watched him on tape. I didn't see a single drop in 4 games, plus the other 2 games that I watched from him before. I didn't see a single drop out of Antonio Gibson. So there aren't many boo-boos with him in terms. Now, I did see the football get through his hands on a couple of catches, but those were deep balls, and he still caught it. You know, it wasn't the cleanest catch, but again, I don't really give a shit how it looks. I'm looking for results. He caught the football, and on one of his touchdowns versus Cincinnati in the AAC championship game. He catches a bubble screen, and it was because the quarterback threw a smoke route, essentially a bubble screen, to him without grabbing the laces. So the ball comes out wobbly as hell, like just a wounded duck. And he's not able to catch it cleanly because it's not a spiral. It barely gets to him. But the quarterback was trying to get it out so quickly that he didn't grab the laces. He just threw it. And it goes through his hands, but he still catches it and walks into the end zone, and they win the game on a game-winning touchdown by Antonio Gibson. So, again, it's not always the cleanest, but he gets the job done, and that's all I care about. He has a nose for the end zone. 13 touchdowns, and get this, 94 touches on the season. That is insane, guys. All right, you do the math, okay? That's insane is what that is, all right? I can do quick math in my head. 13 times 7 is 91. So you're talking about a little over every 7 times he touches the football, all right? It's a touchdown. That's crazy. I mean, think about that for a second. Every 7 times this guy touches the ball, he's making a house call. And these aren't 5-yard touchdowns, okay? These aren't 7-yard touchdowns. These are big effing touchdowns. Speaking of which, it leads me right into my next strength. Big playability. 7 of his touchdowns this past season were 40 yards or more, okay? Think about that for a second, all right? That's Deshaun Jackson status, folks. Remember how many times he would touch the football and, he'd have 3 catches. 2 of them would be 56-yard touchdowns, for the Redskins. And you'd be like, man, Deshaun didn't have many touches, but when he did touch it, he made it count. Same thing could be said for Antonio Gibson. He'd have 8 touches in a game, and 2 of them would go for scores. And you got to talk about the SMU games. We'll get to that when we get to his weaknesses, even though it's a strength. So let's get to his weaknesses real quick. And there's not many. Honestly speaking, you're nitpicking and you're reaching when you start talking about Antonio Gibson and his weaknesses. But the first thing that jumps out at you, and when I do my breakdowns of players, when I take my notes and I do a full write-up on them, the first thing I want to do is look at their complete body of work. I want to see the complete portfolio. What does your entire college career look like on the field from a production standpoint? I want to get a full feel for you. What's your background? Where did you come from? Did you go to school all 4 years? Was there a major injury in there? Why didn't you play in 2017? These are things that I want to know. I want to know what I'm getting myself into. So when I looked at him, he had 1 true year of production. All right. So when teams evaluate players, they look at this guy and they say, is he a 1-year wonder? That's what they ask themselves. When they start thinking about, is this guy worthy of a draft pick? You look at him and you say, is he a 1-hit wonder? Where's the rest of your production? This is the guy that transferred from a JUCO. He went to East Central Community College in Mississippi for 2 years after graduating from high school. And so, I can't tell you whether that was because of grades or because he was under recruited. And it probably was the latter, because this guy could have went anywhere in the country probably as a track athlete, but he wanted to play football. So he probably understood that in order for me to get a scholarship somewhere, I got to go play at a JUCO for a couple of years, tear it up there, and then I'll be able to transfer to a Power 5 conference or a major D1 school and have my talents shown there. So he went to a JUCO for 2 years, transferred to Memphis. That first year, remember I told you guys on the draft party that this is the kind of player Memphis has been churning out. The Dallas Cowboys took one last year. His name is Tony Pollard. He was a running back, a wide receiver, and a kick returner. Set the NCAA record for most kick returns in a collegiate career with 7. Tied the record. So the Cowboys drafted him last year in the 3rd round. And he's a really quality backup to Ezekiel Elliott. He ended up playing running back at the next level. Maybe the Redskins are going to do something like that with Antonio Gibson, but you can move him around. They don't have to put him in the box and say you're a running back. His title may say running back or wide receiver, and I think the Redskins are ultimately going to use him at wide receiver. But it wouldn't shock me if they decided this guy's a better running back than anything else. Let's put him there and actually get him comfortable getting touches at the running back position. Whatever the case may be, they can use him everywhere. They can say he's a running back, but they can split him out. They can use him at receiver. They can motion him out and use him in that capacity as well. So I don't think they're going to put him in a box, but there's only 1 year of production because Tony Pollard was there last year getting all of the touches that Antonio Gibson essentially got this year. So there is really no production in 2018. He wasn't at a major D1 school in 2016 or 2017. So for all intents and purposes, 2019 is all you got on Antonio Gibson. So that's something that, scouts, evaluators, GMs are going to look at. And that's part of the reason why this guy isn't a second or a first round pick, because the talent says he should be a first round pick, but the body of work says you're a third round pick. Another weakness, he's raw at everything. And it's one of those situations, and it's amazing that teams will ding you for this, but he's what I like to call Pam Mom, okay? Pam Mom. And that's essentially proficient at many, master of none. He's raw at everything because he's not great at any one thing. He hasn't had a chance to fully develop at one position because he's playing multiple positions. He's playing wide receiver. He's playing running back. He's kick returning. And because he's splitting his time everywhere, he hasn't had a chance to fully hone in on one specific position. And because of that, he's raw at all of these positions. He could use some more fine tuning as a route runner, because a lot of times you'll see him kind of roll into his routes like a tight end would. And I don't have a problem with tight ends rolling into routes. They're big guys. But if you're a receiver, you want crisp, sharp routes that won't allow defensive backs to stick their foot in the ground, drive on a play, and pick it off. You have to run sharp routes. He's rolling into routes right now. So that's something they can clean up. He's capable. Now, he's tight-hipped. So that's part of the reason he's rolling into him. But he's got enough athleticism and ability to be able to make sharp cuts and come straight down the line and come straight back to the football, which is not something he's doing at this point. His release off the line of scrimmage leaves something to be desired. Okay, but again, it's because he's not naturally a wide receiver. This is something he's continued to work at. So he's got some issues at receiver in terms of things he can clean up, but they're minor. They're things that are easily fixed. At the running back position, he's still raw there. A lot of times when you see him, he's getting gun runs. Or he's running traps out of the gun where you get pulling guards and tackles coming around, and he kind of follows that guy and then cuts off of those blocks. Or he's just getting a gun run where it's like a delay. They got two backs in the backfield, right next to the quarterback, I should say, offset at times, but most of the time they're right next to the quarterback in the gun, and it's two backs, one on each side, and one back will go one way, he'll come the other way, and then he'll just kind of pick his way where he wants to go, and usually it ends up with him bouncing it outside and taking the hell off down the sideline. So his tracks aren't always great, and he's not accustomed to lining up 7 yards behind the quarterback and then taking a track that leads him up the field and pressing a hole. He's not accustomed to doing that because he did not do it at Memphis. So that's something he's going to have to work at. And patience. You could see that he was a little fast to the hole, sometimes not allowing blocks to develop, which really forced him to have to make guys miss because he didn't allow his blocks to develop. He'll get a better sense and feel for how to set blocks up, how to cut off of them. But in the meantime, he's just using raw athletic ability to make guys miss out in space and then use his speed to get to the end zone. So again, he's raw at both positions. He'll figure all of those things out. He'll iron out all of those kinks with more time. And that's essentially why he is raw, is because it's just a lack of time at all of these positions. And again, with more experience, he'll be able to iron out those wrinkles. So here's a guy that SMU game, if there's one game you want to watch, just watch the SMU game. If you don't have a lot of time and you just want to get a snapshot of what Antonio Gibson is in all of his splendor. SMU, the guy set a Memphis record for most total yards in a game. All right, 338 yards by one guy. One guy, okay? He had a kick return for a touchdown. He had a rush for a touchdown. And he had a receiving touchdown in that game. And he destroyed a previously undefeated 8-0 SMU team. They were 7-1. SMU came into their building 8-0, and he single-handedly dismantled an undefeated team and led Memphis to a victory against a previously undefeated SMU team. Are you really listening to what I just said? The man by himself had 338 yards of total offense. Kick returning, had a touchdown. Rushing, had a touchdown. Receiving, had a touchdown. Okay? Utterly ridiculous. Every time it seemed like he touched the ball in that game, it was a massive play, and he went to the crib multiple trips. So if you want to see him in his full splendor, in his element, at his best, the SMU game is where you need to go. But, I mean, you turn on any game, and it's essentially a de facto highlight reel. I mean, he's that kind of football player. So, in conclusion, did the Redskins get this right? Absolutely, they did. Okay, I'm coming back, and I'm essentially telling you what I told you last year, that the Redskins, they got it right. Kyle Smith, he did it again. Now, the question is, do they view him as a wide receiver or a running back or what? Like, the rest of the draft will kind of give us a snapshot into the thought process of how they want to use him. Because if they draft another wide receiver, I'm thinking that means they're probably going to use him all over the place, but maybe a little bit more at running back than wide receiver. If they don't draft the wide receiver, then that tells you they look at him as a guy that they think can play wide receiver. And also that would tell you they really like the guys that are on the roster. They want to give these guys, because they're all young, a chance. Remember, we had 3 rookies last year at wide receiver. So there's still some development that can go on with Kelvin Harmon and Steven Sims Jr. and all of these guys. There are a lot of talented football players at the receiver position. So you're just adding a guy like Antonio Gibson to the mix. So the Redskins got this right. Kyle Smith and company absolutely knocked this one out of the park, and I'm anxious to see what the Redskins do with their 2 fourth-round picks and the rest of the picks, 5th and 2 7s in day number 3 to wrap up this draft. I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Redskins. I'm loving what the Redskins have done in this draft. You get the Predator in around number 1, and now you add a dynamic playmaker. You can never have enough of these guys in Antonio Gibson. I love it. Want more of it, and we're going to see what the Redskins end up doing in day number 3. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content, and also make sure you follow me on IG. Louie T Network _ is the IG. At Louie T Network is the handle on Twitter. Follow me on all these platforms. There's always information coming out. I'm constantly retweeting things and making comments. So, and keeping you abreast of what's going on this channel. So make sure you're following me on all these platforms. And I may put up an Antonio Gibson breakdown if the spirit moves me to do so. But in any event, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of the draft, day number 3. And we'll come back and we'll break down every single one of these Redskins selections, as we always do here on the Louie T Network. So be on the lookout for that as the draft ends and I'm able to process what the Redskins have done. If I've already watched all of those players, I can jump on quickly. If not, I'll go do my homework, and then we'll come back and I'll report what I find. Anyway, you guys have a good one. Take care. We'll talk soon.
Louie T Network.